Hello there, everyone. How you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're going to go over some stories of police officers who got the wrong guys. If you enjoy, like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below in the comments, and check out my links in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? I've got two stories from 25 years ago when I was a cop. One on one side of the badge and one from the other. The first, I got assigned a warrant service to pick up a wanted felon. Mr. Robinson was 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, long red hair, bushy red beard, and lived at, let's say, 123 Elm Street. Pretty distinctive dude. So I roll up to this street, and sure enough, there mowing his lawn in the front yard is the man himself. I make contact with him and say, "Hey, Mr. Robinson, you got warrants and it's time to go to jail." Hook him up, take him to jail, and in central booking I get his property off him, and while filling out the inventory, happened to notice the guy's Mr. Robinson, not Robertson. Soon enough, the wanted guy was my guy's landlord, and twin brother from another mother doppelganger. And when I'd said Robertson, Robinson didn't even have to twig the fact I hadn't said his name. He just heard the similar sounding name as his own. We had to walk the whole thing back and reactivate the warrant, and then kicked him loose with a handshake and an apology. The one from the other side, I had just gotten off duty at 2 a.m. and was driving home still in uniform. There wasn't any other traffic on the road, so I wasn't really surprised when a police car turned in behind me and started following me. I figured he was trolling for drunks, and I was the only thing moving on the road, so he was just going to follow me a little to observe my driving, and he'd realize pretty quickly I was sober and peel off. Instead, another patrol car joined him, and another. And another. And then all four let me up and spread out behind me, blocking the road in a full felony stop. Well, this got interesting. They went through the whole procedure, and I carefully followed their instructions. When they finally got me out and saw my uniform, they just stopped for a few seconds while I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Then 3 of the officers got in their cars, turned off their lights, and took off, while the original officer told me I could put my hands down, and explained what was going on. My car was a spot-on match for the suspect vehicle in an armed robbery and shooting that had just occurred right up the road. I'd driven right by the scene before the cops even got there a few minutes before the officer in the next district spotted me and thought I was the suspect. It was an interesting night. 2 of my colleagues, murder squad detectives, attended custody to meet a defendant answering bail. When they arrived at the custody desk, there were a couple of people hanging around waiting for their solicitors. They told the custody sergeant they were there for insert name, and he pointed one of the guys out. They went up and introduced themselves and said they would also be questioning him at another station, so all 3 got in the car and headed off. While driving, they told the defendant what would be happening. On arrival, he would be arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, questioned, and either bailed or remanded. The guy was like, "You gotta be kidding me. Attempted murder? I was shoplifting." He was relatively calm, half laughing and shaking his head. A short time later, one of the officers got a call from the custody sergeant. Their actual bail appointment had arrived. There were 2 defendants with the same name answering bail that day. They apologized to the non-murderous shoplifter, turned the car around, and headed back to bring the right person in for questioning. Keystone cops to the max. There had been a string of robberies, 7 in 2 weeks, in my neighborhood, so everyone was on high alert. I was home by myself, and one of my dogs started puking, so I rushed to let him outside, forgetting my dad had set the alarm. We had a silent alarm, so I had no clue it had been tripped. sending out a dispatch request to the local 5-0. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I'm young, home alone by myself, and I've been told to never answer the door if I was alone. So I didn't. They kept knocking. Long story short, they broke the door down. They thought they had caught the burglars. Multiple cars. I vaguely remember there being a canine unit involved, and the police had their suspect, a 9-year-old girl crying her eyes out. I was not the group of thieves who ended up being caught about a week later. In our family, we had a great uncle who tattooed his name and social security number to his shoulder. Apparently he had the same name and birthday as another guy with a prison record, and had kept hearing about it. It came in handy at least twice when he was pulled over, and the cops started arresting him. Each time he got out because he had a social security number as proof he was innocent. Honestly, that just sounds like a recipe for disaster. Even though it got him out of trouble, he could easily have his identity stolen that way. I don't know, just the narrator's 2 cents. Not an officer, but I live in a neighborhood in Indy that's going through a major revitalization right now. So it's very much in a transitional phase. We rent a house from a good friend of ours. He bought the house from some garbage people who had lived there for a long time. These people did, sold, made drugs. There was violence, prostitution, everything in general, really. The house was disgusting, unlivable, really, just the worst. Well, the scumbags who lived here still tried to use our address even after 5 years. About a year and a half ago, one of the dudes used our address to renew his driver's license at the BMV. He even had the audacity to leave a note for us to call him when the license came in. Fast forward a few months, around Christmas time, we are all sitting around watching TV when we get a knock on the door. My husband answers, and it's a SWAT team with guns drawn. They see my husband, who does not look like the methed-out crackhead, and inside are our 2 little boys, my parents, and me nursing our baby, plus the Christmas tree and all the lovely trappings of our home. They immediately put their guns down, and my husband and I have a lovely chat with them. Yeah, they had our house surrounded, guns drawn, the whole shebang, looking for this dude who is wanted on some kind of violent felony. We were pissed at this dude, who I refer to as the Big Nasty. A Missouri man nearly spent 17 years behind bars for robbery until his doppelganger was discovered, and the other guy looked so much like him that the authorities decided to toss out his conviction. Jones, 41, had been serving a 19-year jail sentence for a 1999 robbery when he heard other inmates buzzing that another prisoner looked just like him, and even shared his first name, Starr said. It's unclear what the other man was locked up for, and Jones never saw his doppelganger, but he told 2 legal interns assigned to his case about the rumors, according to Alice Craig, one of Jones's lawyers. The interns brought the message back to their superiors at the Midwest Innocent Project and the Paul E. Winson Defender Project, who dug further into the case. It turned out that not only did the other man bear an uncanny resemblance to Jones, he also lived closer to the site of the crime. Jones's doppelganger, Ricky Amos, used to live with his mother in Kansas City, Kansas, near the address of the incident, Craig said. Jones lived across the state in Kansas City, Missouri. When I saw that picture, it made sense to me, said Jones, who has denied committing the robbery to the Star. Either you're going to think we're the same person, or you're going to be like, man, these guys look so much alike. His lawyers showed the 2 men's photos to the victim, 2 witnesses, and the prosecutor in Jones's case, and all 4 admitted they could not tell the pair apart, according to Starr. I'm not a cop, but my mom had a story for this to happen to her. Basically, it revolves around the show America's Most Wanted. A woman who looked almost exactly like my mom was featured on the show. She had the same hair, same face, and the kicker, same name. They even showed my mom's actual information, which I won't list here as being the criminals. The story ended like every other story on that show does. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of this dangerous criminal, please call this number. Now on to my mom's perspective. She was just sitting at home on a Saturday night alone, as she lived alone. She was reading a Stephen King book when she hears some commotion coming from the hallway. She ignores it. Lots of yelling. She had not yet seen the show, which paints her as a criminal, and then suddenly, BAM! Her door is knocked down in an instant. About 10 cops flood into her one-bedroom apartment, and she is arrested. She explained they had the wrong person. They claimed everything matched. Social Security matched. DNA matched. Name matched. Photo resemblance matched. It turns out that the woman was basically stealing my mom's identity and intentionally making herself look like my mom. The end result is that when they created a profile for the criminal, they used my mom's information to start with. So when they arrested my mom, of course the information matched. It was her information originally. They kept her in jail for 2 weeks. It wasn't until they took fingerprints from the scene of the crime they said she committed, and the prints didn't match, that they realized she wasn't the criminal. It's scary to think if they had used her profile prints rather than the crime scene prints as the set to compare to, that she would have been still in jail today. It was basically a life sentence. Damn, that's terrifying. Since everyone else isn't a cop, I was 16 and worked at a golf course mowing lawns and such. We got a call at home from cops that said I'm a suspect in a hit-and-run accident because my plate numbers were on the car that drove away without stopping. The cops said the car was maroon-colored. My car was gray. We told them and figured that was that. The next day at work, there was a minor accident. A dumbass coworker pulled a metal rake too hard, and the rack holding it came down onto my forehead. It wasn't a deep wound, but it bled a lot. My boss took me to the ER to get my head superglued, and to be safe took me home too. Thus, my car stayed at work. That evening, a cop comes by and finds me with a head wound, and my car is missing. I look quite guilty. By sheer luck, the cop calls someone after talking to my parents and discovers that the guy and the plate numbers were close. I probably would have been arrested. Obligatory, not a police officer, but I travel frequently across the Canada-US border, sometimes by bus. One bus trip, the whole bus was held up by one woman, who was pulled back to be interrogated. An hour later, she gets back on the bus, announcing that there was a person on the most wanted list with her same name. However, that person was a 5'4" white male, and she was a relatively tall, probably 5'10", black woman. It took them an hour of investigating and interrogating to realize they had the wrong person. I don't know if the irritation in the narrator's voice can be heard, but it is palpable. I was a curious little kid. My father stopped at a local liquor store to grab a bottle of wine, and I was poking around. The door to the office was unlocked, and I wandered inside, sat in the chair and spun around a few times, got bored and wandered out. A few days later, my father gets a call from the police and we go in. As the officer is speaking to us, I proceed to spin around the chair and pick up and look at everything on his desk. After about a minute, the officer says, "Thank you for coming in. I see what happened. You can go." Turns out the owner's teenage son stole a few grand from the store and tried to blame it on the handsy 5-year-old. Well, like many other posts, I'm not a police officer, but I did get felony stopped while on the Las Vegas Boulevard. I left work, pulled out of the parking garage, and turned right onto Tropicana. I then see lights behind me and start to pull over, thinking it was an emergency vehicle. I am then surrounded by police with guns drawn. This was like midnight on the strip, so it was intense. Police make me walk backwards with my hands on my head. They cuff me and tear into my car almost immediately. Long story short, it was another Mustang without state tags involved in a robbery. That was an intense evening. You said they tore into your car. If they mean that literally, hopefully they paid for your car repairs, right? Right? They totally didn't just tear into your car and just be like, oops, my bad, now you have to pay to get it fixed. Right? Anyway, that's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment with your thoughts down below. Maybe check out my links in the description below. I got Twitters, or X as it might be. I will see you all next time. Hasta la pasta.